What's going on, everybody? We are starting the day off pretty nicely. The Bitcoin miners are relatively green today. Crypto's doing pretty well also. And we got to talk about some news. We got to talk about Bitcoin on the chart. We got to talk about Riot and Bitfarms. They reached an agreement. And we're also going to look over some other things. If you guys find this useful, if you find this informative, make sure you like, subscribe, ring the notification bell. And if you get in early, you miss ads. But that is a bonus to having notifications turned on. All right, now first we have to talk about Riot and Bitfarms and this agreement. And then we'll get into some other Bitcoin news. Riot and Bitfarms reached a settlement ahead of a shareholder meeting. And those of you familiar with the matter know that there's a meeting coming up. Riot was basically working to take over Bitfarms. And according to this article, Riot and Bitfarms have resolved their dispute. As said in this article, the settlement marks the resolution of a contentious bid by Riot to influence Bitfarms' governance, which had triggered the scheduling of a special shareholder meeting. Basically, Riot holds nearly 20% of Bitfarms, and because they hold a certain amount, they have a certain amount of sway in the company. And Riot is essentially, or has been essentially, trying to take over Bitfarms from within, changing the board members, things like that, to make it more in Riot's favor. Just because of this agreement, I'm not so sure that Riot can't go on to take over Bitfarms later. But both parties basically say the settlement's a constructive resolution, and it's in the best interest of shareholders. Riot still maintains its position as Bitfarms' largest shareholder. I definitely have more to do here in terms of research. I want to look more into Amy Friedman, but I don't really see where in this article, at least, this basically makes it impossible for Riot to take over Bitfarms. See, now when you go to the actual investor relations page, you get a lot more information rather than just a quickly written AI article. But basically, Riot has agreed to withdraw their requisition, which is an attempt to take over, basically. And they are accepting a customary standstill provision through Bitfarms' 2026 annual meeting. So until 2026, basically, Riot has to stand still, essentially. But there are certain exceptions. In my eyes, the ball is going to be in Riot's court if Riot continues to try to acquire more and more shares of Bitfarms. Now, what do you guys think about this Riot and Bitfarms news? I do hold Riot, and honestly, Riot will probably be the first Bitcoin miner that I sell. But regarding the Bitcoin miners, in my opinion, this is the time to be buying them. This is the time to still be bullish. The Bitcoin miners you like, it's time to buy. That's just my opinion. But let's continue on. Deja vu. Bitcoin set for a parabolic rally in 2024, and here's why. Bitcoin's price movement is mirroring 2020, and I've talked about this. In 2020, Bitcoin's price surged after breaking out of its reaccumulation range, which marked the beginning of a major rally. After the halving, we saw a bit of a boring period. And back during that cycle, we also saw a huge drop coming up to the halving, whereas this cycle, we kind of saw a run up to the halving. So things aren't identical in every way, but basically now Bitcoin is positioned after this 161-day post-halving period, and it took 161 days in the last cycle before we started going parabolic. And this upward movement lately we've been seeing reflects a pattern similar to 2020, reinforcing expectations of another strong rally. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy because people expect it, because so many of us are following the halving cycles, it pretty much plays out. At least to some extent, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. On-chain data points to accumulation trends. Bitcoin is flowing out of exchanges, meaning it's moving into wallets. Now, I want to show you guys Bitcoin and show you a couple important points I'm watching. We have the 65,000. Of course, it turned out to be a bit of a resistance. We basically touched it and pulled back, along with the 200 MA. The 200 MA right around 64 and the 65,000 level. Like I said on Friday, these are two important zones to crack. This is basically our next zone to break. If we can break these, we are on our next leg up. We are on our move towards this descending resistance, in my opinion. If we can break the 64 and 65, if we can flip these resistances to support, I do think we're on our way to break this resistance if we can do that. And then on a break of this resistance, this descending resistance we have been in for a very long time. Once we can break this descending resistance, it's a matter of breaking out of these previous lower highs. The psychological 70, roughly 71.5, and finally the 74,000, previous all-time high of Bitcoin. Once we break that, the hype, the amount of FOMO, the euphoria will very much so intensify. If the past is any indication on the future, if the cycles play out, once we break this all-time high, there is no looking back. We are going to go parabolic. If history plays out, which I do expect it to. Now, if we find these as resistance, I do think we're going to come down and test our ascending support. That is, if we do not break out of these two zones, if we don't break the 200 MA, and if we don't break this 65,000 zone. Then we would probably be coming down to test this ascending support. If this breaks, a test of the 50 MA would probably be likely right around 60,000 by the time. And then it's up to lower supports to hold if that's the case. But the farther away we get to 49,000, the more and more agreement we'll have that that was in fact the bottom on this pullback. I do think that's the case. I do think we are not going to revisit 49,000. I do think we're getting too deep into too deep towards Q4 to see a huge drop, unless the past plays out differently. Unless this cycle plays out differently than every cycle. When you have Bitcoin on exchanges at lows not seen since 2018, when you have whales accumulating at the levels they are, I have no reason to believe that Q4 will be any different than past cycles. I have no reason to believe that 2025 we won't see the top. I'm putting my neck out there and I am saying that August 5, that was the bottom. That was Bitcoin's bottom on this pullback. Just like the market collectively agrees, or at least 99.9% of the market believes that 15K back in 2022, that was the Bitcoin low. That was the all-time crypto winter low that we're going to see that cycle. I do think when we look back, we will have this collective agreement that 49,000 was the bottom on this pullback. On this post-halving accumulation phase, 49K was the bottom. Now that it's moved this much, does that mean it's not a buy? No, I do think Bitcoin's still a buy here. I'm not going to be buying the Bitcoin miners and crypto very heavily during 2025 and during late 2024. That's the time to start stepping back. That is the time to stop being a buyer. That is the time to start turning into a seller. But let me know what your guys' plan is. How much longer do you plan on buying the Bitcoin miners, scaling in as we get through the rest of this bull run? In my opinion, we are at least halfway through, if not 2/3 of the way through, something like that. But I do think there is definitely still a lot of juice left. And really, it's just a matter of breaking these lower lows and lower highs, which I will remind you, we have seen exactly this last cycle. Lower lows, lower highs, and then we finally break it. We finally break that previous cycle top, and bam, we are gone. Gone! All right, now there's one more thing I want to mention in terms of technicals. This article brings it up very well, and this is the RSI. And I gotta show you on the weekly RSI, just look at this trend. Look at this breakout signal. This is a fantastic chart, and I gotta give credit to Kevin Svensson. He basically says the weekly RSI breakout is the most reliable macro bullish signal throughout Bitcoin's history, in my opinion. And he shows every time here, when you break that downtrend on the RSI, you go into a rally. You break that downtrend, bam, you go on a rally. You break that downtrend. I think you guys see the picture. Break the downtrend, bam, rally. Break the downtrend, bam, rally. We are breaking, we just broke this downtrend. I do think the rally is coming. Follow the cycles. This is the time. This is the time to be excited. This is the time to be ready. This is the time that we get rewarded for all our time in Bitcoin and crypto and the Bitcoin miners, obviously. The price you pay for these gains is dealing with the pain, dealing with the down days, being the type that can hold on rather than freaking out and saying this stock sucks, why isn't it moving, it's time to get out, the performance has been horrible, yada yada yada, despite something moving 4x in less than a year. Foolish retail is going to say that the Bitcoin miners are done, the Bitcoin miners are doing terribly, when in reality, there are Bitcoin miners that are doing better than Bitcoin, even with this pullback, even with the hard pullback that these Bitcoin miners have experienced, 60% down, for example, with CleanSpark. CleanSpark has still outperformed Bitcoin, believe it or not. But you have people saying CleanSpark sucks. Well, then does Bitcoin suck because it's underperforming? And I know what you want to say. Last cycle, CleanSpark is doing terrible than last cycle. CleanSpark is way lower than its previous all-time highs versus Bitcoin. That is true. That is why you don't hold the Bitcoin miners cycle to cycle. You buy them in the crypto winter and you sell them in the FOMO stage. You sell them in 2025. I do plan on selling the vast majority of these Bitcoin miners. I am not holding any of them besides possibly CleanSpark, maybe the AI plays, small percentage of them from what I currently own. But you know, the Bitcoin miners are basically proxies for Bitcoin. They're basically derivatives of Bitcoin. They're like a 3x leveraged fund for Bitcoin. You want to be in them when Bitcoin's going up, and you do not want to be in them when Bitcoin is going down. You do not want to hold them throughout crypto winter. You want to get out, wait, and start reaccumulating. But basically the price you pay for these Bitcoin miners, you know, for the increased gains versus Bitcoin at times, the price of the ride, insert an arbitrary size. You must be this patient to handle riding the Bitcoin miners. You have to be patient to be able to handle holding until the end. A lot of people won't. A lot of people will say, this sucks, I'm not going to hold on anymore. Or a lot of people will just move on, and that's fine. But the people that get these Bitcoin miners, the people that understand the price you pay for this crypto ride is the volatility. But days like these are great because it brings a little more optimism back to retail. It reminds retail that, hey, we can have these days. There are great days for Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners. And I do think there are a lot of great days like this to come. We are approaching the best phase for Bitcoin We just got out of a pretty long pullback after running from 15,000 all the way to the 70,000s. Bitcoin is now at 63,000, working to claim the 200 MA, working its way back over 65,000, and after that, working to break its descending resistance and going on to break all-time highs, and that is when that parabolic phase comes. I didn't hold my Bitcoin and my Bitcoin miners this long to then sell now right before the rally. If you follow the halvings, this is always where we have rallied. If you follow what whales are doing, if you follow coins on exchange, everything is lining up. And if you also follow into money supply, money printing, we will see more of it as different countries approach recessions, as other countries approach financial struggles. We will see money printed, and this is a tale as old as time. This money will flow into hard assets like Bitcoin, like real estate, like gold. This is why the rich get richer. They put their money into hard assets. This is why the poor gets poorer. They put their money into cash. They put it all into the bank and save it. Sorry to rant, but I don't know where to end this video, so I'll just end it here. What is your opinion on the Bitcoin miners? What do you guys think? Do you think this Bitcoin cycle will play out similarly to last cycles? Or will we see something different this cycle? Is the top already in? Do you think the top is in? Do you think maybe because of Wall Street's control now that they're going to change the cycles forever? That is a valid thing to start thinking about. And while I do think this cycle will play out very, very similarly to past cycles, and it's already doing so, there will be a point perhaps where the 4-year cycles are at least somewhat different. Maybe not as similar, but somewhat different. But I do believe we will still see a crypto winter in the in-between time of the halvings, and we will see, a rally coming up to the halving in anticipation of the halving. It is as simple as supply and demand. It is one reason why I'm so bullish on Bitcoin. We already have the vast majority, like 94% of Bitcoin's overall supply is already out in circulation. We are going to be fighting for the last 6% of Bitcoin's overall supply for like 100 years. So to compare Bitcoin to Tulip Mania, anyone that does that, well, they clearly don't know what Bitcoin really is. I would much rather listen to someone that has spent hundreds of hours on Bitcoin and learning Bitcoin that is bullish than someone that has spent 1 hour looking at Bitcoin and learning about Bitcoin that is bearish. Hopefully you guys get what I'm saying with that statement. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hopefully we have a good week. This is a good start.